Most people will never understand this. They spend their entire lives reacting to everything around them, and they wonder why they never find peace. But what if I told you that the secret to true power isn't in controlling what happens to you, but in mastering how you respond to it? This truth was discovered almost a century ago, and in 2026 it's more relevant than ever. Right now, someone just cut you off in traffic, your boss sent you another demanding email, your phone won't stop buzzing with notifications, and with each of these moments you feel that familiar tension rising in your chest. Your heart rate increases, your jaw clenches, you're losing your peace one small annoyance at a time. But here's what most people don't realize. The problem isn't what's happening to you. The problem is that you were never taught how to remain unbothered. After studying the most successful people in the world for over 2 decades, a pattern emerged that changed everything. Today, I'm going to show you exactly how to apply this wisdom so that by the end of this year, nothing can shake your inner peace. Let's be real for a second. We're living in the most distracted, reactive, and emotionally unstable time in human history. Every single day, you're bombarded with thousands of stimuli designed to trigger a response from you. Social media wants your outrage. News outlets want your fear. People want your validation. And somewhere in all of this noise, you've lost touch with the most important thing you'll ever own: your inner stillness. Think about your typical day. You wake up and immediately check your phone. Before you've even had a chance to set your own mental state, you're already absorbing everyone else's opinions, problems, and energy. Someone posts something that irritates you. You read a comment that frustrates you. You see news that worries you. And just like that, within the first 10 minutes of your day, you've already given away your peace. Then you go to work or school, and the cycle continues. Someone says something that bothers you. A project doesn't go as planned. You encounter resistance, criticism, or setbacks. And each time you feel it, that emotional reaction that takes over your body and mind. Your shoulders tense up, your thoughts race. You replay conversations in your head. You imagine scenarios that haven't even happened yet. You're living in a constant state of reaction, and it's draining every ounce of energy you have. But here's the deeper issue that nobody talks about. When you live this way, when you allow every external event to dictate your internal state, you're not actually living your own life. You're living as a puppet, with invisible strings attached to every person, situation, and circumstance around you. Someone pulls a string and you dance. Someone else pulls another string and you jump. You have no control, you have no center, you have no peace. This problem was understood deeply by those who studied success patterns. They saw how people sabotaged their own success, not because they lacked talent or opportunity, but because they couldn't master their own minds. They would get close to their goals, and then one criticism, one setback, one moment of doubt would completely derail them. They were walking through life as open wounds, sensitive to every touch, reactive to every stimulus. And in 2026, this problem has only intensified. We have more triggers, more distractions, and more reasons to lose our center than ever before. The foundation of unshakable peace. So where do we start? How do you go from being someone who's constantly bothered by everything to someone who remains calm regardless of what's happening around you? There's a principle called controlled attention. This is the ability to keep your mind focused on what you choose, not on what the world throws at you. And this isn't some abstract concept that sounds good but doesn't work in real life. This is the actual foundation that separates people who stay centered from people who are constantly spinning out of control. Most people have never exercised this muscle. They've spent their entire lives allowing their attention to be pulled in whatever direction has the most energy. Someone raises their voice, and their attention goes there. A notification pops up, and their attention goes there. A worry enters their mind, and their attention goes there. They're not directing their attention, they're being directed by it. It's like they're walking through life with a remote control strapped to their chest, and everyone around them has access to the buttons. Push this button and they get angry. Push that button and they get anxious. Push another button and they spiral into worry. They have no say in the matter because they never learned that they could choose where their attention goes. But here's what changes everything. Your attention is the most valuable resource you have. It's more valuable than your time. It's more valuable than your money. Because wherever your attention goes, your energy follows. And wherever your energy goes, your life follows. If you're constantly putting your attention on things that bother you, then your entire life becomes about being bothered. If you're constantly putting your attention on drama, conflict, and problems, then that's what your life becomes. It's not complicated. It's actually painfully simple. Your life is a reflection of where you consistently place your attention. Research into successful indeed. Individuals revealed that every one of them had mastered this one skill. They could be in the middle of chaos and still maintain their focus on what mattered. They could receive criticism and still keep their attention on their goals. They could face setbacks and still direct their energy toward solutions instead of problems. This wasn't because nothing bothered them. It was because they had trained themselves to not give their attention to things that didn't serve them. They understood something that most people never figure out. Just because something is happening doesn't mean you have to give it your mental energy. Think of your mind like a garden. Every thought you give attention to is like watering a plant. If you keep watering the weeds, the plants of anger, frustration, anxiety, and stress, then that's what grows. Those weeds start taking over everything. They choke out any possibility of peace or clarity. But if you starve those weeds of attention and instead water the plants of peace, focus, and clarity, then that's what takes over your garden. You can't have both. You have to choose. And this choice isn't a one-time thing. It's a choice you make hundreds of times every single day. The practice starts simple. Throughout your day, notice where your attention is going. Are you thinking about something that empowers you or something that drains you? Are you replaying a negative interaction or planning your next positive move? Are you focused on what you can't control or what you can? Every time you notice your attention has wandered to something that bothers you, gently bring it back to something that serves you. This isn't about suppressing emotions or pretending problems don't exist. It's about refusing to give your mental energy to things that don't deserve it. Here's what most people get wrong about this practice. They think it means ignoring reality or living in some fantasy world where problems don't exist. But that's not it at all. You can be fully aware of a problem without giving it all of your mental energy. You can acknowledge that something bothers you without dwelling on it for hours. You can face difficult situations without letting them consume every waking thought. The difference is in how you allocate your attention. Do you give 5 minutes of attention to finding a solution? Or do you give 5 hours of attention to complaining about the problem? Both approaches acknowledge the problem exists, but only one approach actually serves you. Those who mastered their attention had a specific way of processing events. When something happened, they would acknowledge it, assess whether they could do anything about it, and then either take action or move on. They didn't get stuck in the loop of thinking about it over and over without taking action. They didn't waste energy on elaborate stories about what it meant or why it happened or who was to blame. They saw what was, decided what to do about it, and then moved their attention to the next thing. This ability to process and move on is what kept them from being bothered by things that would completely derail most people. And here's the powerful part that gets emphasized again and again in success literature. When you control your attention, you control your life. Not in some magical thinking way where you ignore reality and it goes away, but in a practical way where you stop wasting energy on things that don't matter and start directing all of your power toward things that do. You stop being a victim of whatever grabs your attention and start being the director of your own mental energy. This is the foundation. This is where unshakable peace begins. Not in some distant future when your life is perfect, but right now, in this moment, with the choice of where you place your attention, the power of emotional detachment. Now, let's talk about something that most people completely misunderstand: emotional detachment. When people hear this phrase, they think it means becoming cold, distant, or uncaring. They imagine some robot walking through life feeling nothing, and they think that sounds terrible. But that's not what it means at all. True emotional detachment is the ability to observe your emotions without being controlled by them. It's the difference between feeling anger and being angry, between feeling fear and being fearful, between feeling hurt and being a victim. It's about having emotions without your emotions having you. Studies of the most emotionally intelligent people revealed something fascinating. They all had this quality of being in the world, but not of it. They could be present in difficult situations without getting swept away by the emotional current. They could listen to criticism without their ego getting wounded. They could face failure without their identity crumbling. How did they do this? What was their secret? Because from the outside, it looked like they just naturally had thicker skin or were born with some special ability to not care what people thought. But that wasn't it at all. They understood a simple truth. You are not your emotions. Your emotions are signals, messages from your body and subconscious mind, but they're not who you are. When you identify with your emotions, when you say I am angry instead of I feel anger, you've merged your identity with a temporary state. And once you've done that, you're no longer in control. The emotion is in control of you. It's like you've handed over the steering wheel of your life to whatever feeling happens to be passing through you in that moment. And feelings pass through constantly. They change, they shift, they come and go like weather. So if your identity is merged with your emotions, then you're constantly changing, constantly unstable, constantly at the mercy of internal weather patterns you don't control. The practice of emotional detachment starts with creating space between you and your emotions. When you feel something rising in you, instead of immediately reacting, pause, take a breath, and observe it like you're a scientist studying a phenomenon. What is this feeling? Where is it in my body? What triggered it? What is it trying to tell me? This simple act of observation creates separation. You're no longer drowning in the emotion. You're standing on the shore, watching the wave. The wave is still there. It's still real. But you're not being pulled under by it. Here's what this looks like in real life. Someone says something disrespectful to you. Immediately, you feel that surge of anger. Your old pattern would be to react instantly, to say something back, to defend yourself, to let that anger control your next words and actions. But with emotional detachment, you pause. You feel the anger, but you don't become it. You observe it. You recognize it as a signal that your boundaries have been crossed or your ego has been challenged. And from that place of observation, you can choose your response instead of being forced into a reaction. You might still address the disrespect. You might still set a boundary. But you're doing it from a place of clarity and choice, not from a place of being hijacked by emotion. This is true power. Not the power to never feel emotions, but the power to feel them without being controlled by them. This was called emotional maturity, and it was believed to be one of the key differences between people who achieved lasting success and those who didn't. Because success requires you to face rejection, criticism, setbacks, and obstacles. If you can't detach from the emotions these experiences trigger, you'll quit. You'll give up. You'll let your temporary feelings dictate your permanent actions. Someone criticizes your work, and you feel hurt, and instead of detaching from that hurt and learning from the feedback, you quit the entire project. You face a setback and you feel discouraged, and instead of detaching from that discouragement and finding another path, you give up on your dream. Your emotions are running the show, and emotions are terrible leaders because they're so reactive and short-sighted. This pattern destroyed so many people who had incredible potential. They would get so close to their goals, and then one emotional event would completely derail them. A moment of rejection would trigger feelings of worthlessness, and instead of observing those feelings and recognizing them as old wounds being activated, they would believe the feelings and walk away from their dreams. A moment of fear would trigger anxiety about the future, and instead of observing that anxiety and moving forward anyway, they would let it paralyze them. They were slaves to their emotions, and emotions are cruel masters. But the people who succeeded, the people who achieved what's called lasting success, they had learned this skill of emotional detachment. They felt everything. They weren't numb or disconnected. But they didn't let air feelings make their decisions. They felt fear and moved forward anyway. They felt doubt and continued working anyway. They felt hurt and kept their hearts open anyway. They had mastered the art of feeling without being controlled by the feeling. And this mastery changed everything for them, because it meant that external events lost their power to destroy their internal state. Here's what you need to understand about this practice. It's not about becoming emotionless. It's not about pretending you don't feel things. It's about changing your relationship with your emotions. Instead of being at war with them or being controlled by them, you become curious about them. You welcome them as information. You listen to what they're trying to tell you, but you don't let them run your life. It's like having a child who's throwing a tantrum. You don't ignore the child. You don't yell at the child, but you also don't let the child drive the car. You acknowledge the feelings, you address what needs to be addressed, and then you continue moving in the direction you've chosen. That's emotional detachment. That's emotional maturity. And that's what allows you to act as if nothing bothers you, even when you're feeling intense emotions. The illusion of control. Let me share something with you that changed my entire perspective on life. Most of the things that bother you, most of the things that steal your peace, are things you were never meant to control in the first place. You're trying to control other people's opinions. You're trying to control outcomes. You're trying to control circumstances that are completely outside of your influence. And every time reality doesn't match your expectations, you suffer. Every single time the world doesn't bend to your will, you lose your peace. And since the world rarely bends to anyone's will, you're losing your peace constantly. Extensive research into human behavior revealed how people waste enormous amounts of mental and emotional energy trying to control things they can't control. They worry about what people think of them. They stress about whether their plans will work out perfectly. They lose sleep over situations that haven't even happened yet. And all of this worry, all of this stress, all of this mental energy is being poured into a black hole because you cannot control these things. It's like trying to control the weather by worrying about it. It doesn't work. It never has. It never will. But people keep doing it because nobody ever taught them the difference between what they can control and what they can't. But here's the liberating truth. You don't need to control these things. You only need to control three things: your thoughts, your words, and your actions. That's it. Everything else is outside of your domain. When you truly understand this, when you truly internalize this, a massive weight lifts off your shoulders. Because you realize that your job isn't to control the world. Your job is to control yourself. And that's a job that's actually possible. You can control yourself. You can master your own mind, your own mouth, your own movements. But you cannot control what other people think, what outcomes emerge, what circumstances arise. Those things are going to unfold according to their own nature. And your attempts to control them are just creating suffering. Think about how much energy you'd save if you stopped trying to control things you can't control. No more worrying about whether people like you. They're going to think what they think. No more stressing about whether your plan will work perfectly. It'll unfold how it unfolds. No more losing sleep over what might happen. You'll deal with it if and when it happens. All of that energy that was being wasted on trying to control the uncontrollable can now be redirected to the only place it actually matters. Controlling yourself, improving yourself, developing yourself, mastering your own thoughts, words, and actions. This is where the practice of acting as if nothing bothers you really begins. Because when you stop trying to control everything, most things naturally stop bothering you. That person's opinion of you, can't control it, so it doesn't bother you. That situation that didn't go as planned, can't control it, so it doesn't bother you. That uncertainty about the future, can't control it, so it doesn't bother you. You're not suppressing your emotions or pretending you don't care. You're simply recognizing that your peace isn't dependent on things outside of your control. Observation showed that the most peaceful people all had this quality. They had clear boundaries around what they considered their responsibility and what they didn't. They took full responsibility for their own thoughts, words, and actions. They didn't make excuses. They didn't blame others. They owned their part completely. But they also didn't take responsibility for things that weren't theirs to control. They didn't take responsibility for other people's reactions. They didn't take responsibility for outcomes that depended on factors beyond their influence. They didn't take responsibility for circumstances that were simply part of life happening. This clarity around responsibility created incredible peace because it eliminated so much unnecessary suffering. Most people have it backwards. They don't take responsibility for the things they can control, like their own reactions and choices. Instead, they blame circumstances, other people, or bad luck. But then they try to take responsibility for things they can't control, like other people's opinions, or whether their plans work out perfectly. So they end up feeling powerless over their own lives, while simultaneously exhausted from trying to control things that are impossible to control. It's the worst of both worlds, but when you flip the script, When you take full responsibility for what you can control and release responsibility for what you can't, everything shifts. You suddenly have all this power over your own life because you're focused on the things you actually can change. And you suddenly have all this peace about everything else because you've stopped fighting battles you can never win. Someone doesn't like you? That's their business, not yours. Your business is being the kind of person you respect. Your plan didn't work out? That's life's business, not yours. Your business is learning from what happened and choosing your next move. The future is uncertain? That's reality's business, not yours. Your business is showing up fully in this present moment and doing what you can with what you have. This understanding of control was found to be essential for success because success requires you to keep going regardless of outcomes. You have to be able to face rejection without being crushed. You have to be able to experience failure without giving up. You have to be able to deal with uncertainty without being paralyzed. And the only way you can do that is if you've released the need to control these things. If you need every person to accept you, you'll quit at the first rejection. If you need every plan to work perfectly, you'll quit at the first failure. If you need certainty before you move, you'll never move at all. But if you release control over these things and focus only on controlling yourself, then you become unstoppable. Not because nothing can hurt you, but because nothing can stop you from choosing your response, your next move, your next thought. That's the illusion of control. You were never meant to control the world. You were only ever meant to control yourself. And when you finally accept that, you find a freedom and a peace that nothing external can disturb. The discipline of daily practice. Now, here's what nobody tells you about all of this wisdom. Knowing it intellectually doesn't change anything. You can understand every principle I've shared so far and still be the same reactive, bothered person you were before. Why? Because knowledge without practice is just entertainment. It's just another interesting idea that makes you feel good for a moment, but changes nothing in your actual life. You can read 1,000 books about inner peace, watch 100 videos about staying calm, and understand all the theory perfectly. But if you're not practicing these principles every single day, then you're just collecting information. You're not transforming. You're not growing. You're not becoming the unbothered person you want to be. The wisdom traditions emphasize this concept obsessively. They don't just want to give people good ideas, they want to give them practical methods that will transform their lives. And the discovery has been made repeatedly that the only way these principles become real is through daily practice. You have to train your mind the same way you would train your body. Consistently, deliberately, and with clear intention. Nobody goes to the gym once and expects to be strong for the rest of their life. Nobody practices a skill one time and expects to be a master. But somehow, when it comes to inner peace, people think they can understand the concept and that's enough. It's not. Understanding is just the beginning. Practice is where the transformation happens. So what does this practice look like? It starts first thing in the morning before the world has a chance to pull you into its chaos. You spend time with yourself, not scrolling, not consuming, not reacting, just being. You sit in silence and you connect with that part of you that exists beneath all the noise. Some people call this meditation, some people call it prayer, some people call it contemplation. The name doesn't matter. What matters is that you're creating a foundation of inner stillness that you can return to throughout the day. This morning practice is like setting the tone for everything that follows. It's like tuning an instrument before you play it. If you skip this step, you're going to be out of tune all day long. And here's why this morning practice is so powerful. It's the one time of day when you have complete control. Nobody is demanding your attention yet. Your phone hasn't started buzzing. Your responsibilities haven. Tea kicked in. It's just you and the quiet. And in that quiet, you remember who you are beneath all the roles you play and all the reactions you have. You reconnect with that center of peace that's always there, waiting for you to notice it. This practice is considered non-negotiable. If you skip it, you're starting your day from a deficit. You're starting from reaction instead of intention. And that sets the pattern for everything that follows. Then, as you move through your day, you practice awareness. You notice when something bothers you. You notice when your peace is disrupted. You notice when you're about to react instead of respond. And in those moments, you apply the principles. You redirect your attention. You create emotional detachment. You release the need to control. You choose your response. Every single time you do this, you're building the muscle of unshakable peace. And just like building physical muscle, it doesn't happen overnight. The first time you try to redirect your attention when you're angry, it's going to be hard. The first time you try to detach from an emotion that has you in its grip, it's going to feel impossible. But you do it anyway, you practice anyway. And each time you practice, it gets a little bit easier. People who succeeded at this practice had one thing in common. They didn't expect perfection. They didn't beat themselves up when they failed. They just kept practicing. They understood that some days they would be masters of themselves, and other days they would fall back into old patterns. And both of those experiences were part of the practice. Because even when you fail, even when you lose your center, that's still practice, that's still learning, that's still growth. As long as you notice what happened, as long as you learn from it, as long as you commit to trying again tomorrow, then you're practicing. At the end of the day, you reflect. You review the moments where you stayed centered and the moments where you lost your center. Not with judgment, but with curiosity. What triggered you? What pattern showed up? What can you learn? This reflection process is crucial because it turns your experiences into wisdom. Without reflection, you're just repeating the same patterns over and over. With reflection, you're evolving. You're seeing the patterns that keep showing up. You're noticing what triggers you most consistently. You're learning what practices work best for you. This reflection doesn't have to take long. Even 5 minutes at the end of the day where you honestly review what happened can make a massive difference. This discipline was practiced for decades by those who taught these principles. The understanding was clear. Mastering yourself isn't a destination. It's a daily practice. Some days you'll be strong. Some days you'll fall back into old patterns. But if you stay committed to the practice over time, something shifts. The things that used to bother you lose their power. The situations that used to throw you off balance barely register. You become, as it said, a master of yourself. And this mastery doesn't come from one big breakthrough moment. It comes from thousands of small moments where you chose practice over comfort, where you chose awareness over autopilot, where you chose growth over staying the same. Here's what everyone needs to understand about daily practice. It's not about being perfect. It's about being consistent. It's not about never losing your center. It's about returning to your center faster each time you lose it. It's not about reaching some final state where nothing ever bothers you. It's about building the capacity to handle more and more without losing your peace. Every day you practice, you're getting stronger. Every day you apply these principles, you're becoming more of who you're meant to be. And over time, this daily practice transforms from something you have to force yourself to do into something you can't imagine living without. Because once you experience the peace that comes from mastering yourself, once you taste the freedom that comes from not being bothered by everything, you'll never want to go back to the old way of living. The spiritual dimension of inner peace, there's something deeper happening here that we need to talk about. All of these practices, all of these principles, they're not just psychological techniques. They're pointing to something more profound, something spiritual. Despite being known for practical success principles, the deeper wisdom traditions were deeply spiritual. The belief was clear. True peace, true power, true mastery came from connecting with something greater than yourself. And this isn't some abstract concept that sounds nice but has no practical application. This spiritual dimension is actually the most practical thing we can talk about because it's the source of everything else. It's been called infinite intelligence. Others call it God, the universe, consciousness, or source. The name doesn't matter. What matters is the recognition that you are not just this small, separate, reactive person buffeted by life's circumstances. You are connected to something vast, something unchanging, something that exists beyond the temporary dramas of daily life. And when you connect with this dimension of yourself, everything changes. Not because your circumstances change, but because your relationship to your circumstances changes. You stop being this fragile little person trying to survive in a hostile world, and you start being an expression of something much larger, much more stable, much more powerful. This is why the ancient wisdom traditions, whether it's the Stoics, the Buddhists, the Taoists, or the mystics of any tradition, all point to the same truth. Your true nature is peace. It's not something you have to create or achieve, it's something you have to uncover by removing all the layers of conditioning, reaction, and identification that have covered it up. You were born with this peace. You just forgot about it because the world trained you to look for peace in external things. The world taught you that peace comes from having the right circumstances, the right relationships, the right achievements. But that's a lie. That kind of peace is temporary and fragile because it depends on things you can't control. Think about a young child before they've been fully conditioned by society. They can be crying one moment and laughing the next. They don't hold on to emotional states. They don't create stories about why something bothers them. They experience, they express, and they return to their natural state of presence and peace. That's your true nature. That's what you're returning to through all of these practices. You're not building something new. You're removing the layers that are covering what was always there. You're unlearning the patterns that were taught to you. You're remembering what you forgot. When you approach this work from a spiritual perspective, something shifts in your motivation. You're no longer just trying to be less bothered so you can be more productive or successful. You're recognizing that inner peace is your birthright. It's who you actually are beneath all the layers of ego, conditioning, and reactivity. And every time you choose peace over reaction, every time you remain centered in chaos, you're not creating something new. You're remembering something ancient. You're connecting with a part of yourself that has always been peaceful, that has always been whole, that has never been broken by any circumstance. There's a practice that's been recommended throughout wisdom traditions. It's been called the daily appointment with infinite intelligence. Every day, time is spent in silence, connecting with this deeper dimension. Questions are asked and answers are listened for. Worries are released and trust is placed in a larger intelligence. Alignment happens with something greater than the small, separate self. And from this connection, a source of peace and power emerges that no external circumstance can disturb. This wasn't just a nice idea. This was the foundation of everything else. This was where unshakable peace came from. You can do this too. Whatever your beliefs, whatever your background, you can connect with this deeper dimension. You can recognize that you are not just your thoughts, your emotions, your circumstances, or your story. You are the awareness that witnesses all of these things, and awareness itself is never disturbed. It watches the storms pass without being touched by them. Think about that for a moment. Right now, as you're experiencing this, there's a part of you that's aware of your thoughts. There's a part of you that aware of your emotions. There's a part of you that's aware of your body and your surroundings. That awareness, that witnessing presence, is never disturbed by what it witnesses. It remains peaceful and still regardless of what's happening. This is the spiritual truth that's been discovered across traditions. Your true self, your deepest nature, is that awareness. It's not the thoughts or emotions or circumstances that you're aware of. It's the awareness itself. And that awareness is always at peace, always. It doesn't come and go. It doesn't get disturbed and then calm down. It's constantly, eternally peaceful. The only reason you don't experience this peace all the time is because you've identified with the things you're aware of instead of the awareness itself. You've identified with your thoughts, so when your thoughts are chaotic, you feel chaotic. You've identified with your emotions, so when your emotions are turbulent, you feel turbulent. You've identified with your circumstances, so when your circumstances are difficult, you feel disturbed. But when you shift your identity from the things you're aware of to the awareness itself, everything changes. You realize that you're not this small, fragile person trying to maintain peace in a chaotic world. You are peace itself, witnessing the chaos without being touched by it. This isn't just a nice philosophy. This is a lived reality that you can experience right now. Just notice the awareness that's present in this moment. Notice the presence that exists before any thought arises. Notice the stillness that's always there beneath the activity of your mind. That's who you really are. That's the spiritual dimension of inner peace. And when you connect with that, when you rest in that, nothing can bother you because there's nothing there to be bothered. There's just awareness watching life unfold with perfect peace, the transformation of relationships, Here's something interesting that happens when you start living this way. When you stop being bothered by everything, when you master your own reactions, your relationships completely transform. And not always in the ways you expect. Some relationships get deeper and more authentic. Others naturally fade away. And both of these outcomes are exactly what needs to happen, because your relationships are a mirror of your internal state. When you change internally, your external relationships must change to match. It's not a choice, it's just how it works. Observation revealed this pattern in everyone who developed inner mastery. Their relationships went through a sorting process. The people who were in their lives just to create drama, to feed off their reactions, to keep them small, these people couldn't stay anymore. Because you're no longer participating in those patterns. You're no longer taking the bait. You're no longer engaging in the emotional ping pong. And without your participation, those dynamics dissolve. It's like pulling the plug on a machine. The machine can't run without power, and these dysfunctional relationships can't run without your reactive participation. At first, this can feel lonely. People might say you've changed. They might accuse you of not caring anymore. They might try harder to get a reaction out of you. But this is just the old patterns trying to survive. If you stay centered, if you continue to act as if nothing bothers you, one of two things will happen. Either those people will evolve with you, rising to meet you at this new level, or they'll move on to find someone else who will participate in the old dramas. And both outcomes are perfect, because you're no longer willing to sacrifice your peace for anyone. You're no longer willing to play small so others feel comfortable. You're no longer willing to engage in dysfunction just to maintain a relationship. The relationships that remain and deepen are the ones based on something real. They're based on mutual growth, respect, and authenticity. These people don't need you to react to feel connected to you. They don't need drama to feel alive. They appreciate your peace and stability. They're inspired by your growth. They support your journey because they're on their own journey too. These are the relationships that actually nourish you instead of drain you. These are the people who celebrate your peace instead of trying to disturb it. These are the connections that make life richer instead of more complicated. .br. But here's the really powerful part. When you're no longer reactive, when nothing bothers you, you become a source of peace for others. People are drawn to you because they feel calm in your presence. They feel safe to be themselves. They sense that you're not going to judge them, manipulate them, or need them to be anything other than who they are. You become like a lighthouse in the storm, steady and bright, while everything else is chaotic. And this quality, this unshakable presence, is one of the most attractive things in the world. Not attractive in a romantic sense necessarily, but attractive in the sense that people are naturally pulled toward it. These individuals are often called magnetic personalities, and the discovery was made that this magnetism wasn't something they were born with. It was something they developed through inner mastery. By refusing to be disturbed by external circumstances, by maintaining their center regardless of what was happening around them, they naturally attracted better relationships, better opportunities, and better experiences. It's like they created a gravity field around themselves that pulled in everything that matched their frequency. And because their frequency was peace, stability, and mastery, that's what they attracted. The test of real challenges. Now, let's be honest about something. Everything I've shared so far sounds great when life is relatively calm. But what about when you face real challenges? What about when you lose someone you love? What about when you face financial crisis? What about when your health fails? What about when your dreams collapse? Does this wisdom still apply then? Or is this just positive thinking that crumbles under real pressure? Because if these principles only work when life is easy, then they're worthless. Real wisdom has to hold up under real pressure. It has to work when everything is falling apart. It has to be there when you need it most. Napoleon Hill faced massive challenges in his own life. He experienced bankruptcy, the loss of loved ones, professional failures, and periods of deep darkness. And it was during these times that he tested these principles most deeply. And here's what he discovered. The principles don't promise that nothing bad will happen to you. They don't promise that you won't feel pain. They promise something different. They promise that even in the midst of real suffering, You can maintain your center. You can maintain your dignity. You can maintain your connection to something deeper. This is crucial to understand because so many people misunderstand what inner peace actually means. They think it means walking around with a fake smile, pretending everything is fine when it's clearly not. That's not peace. That's denial. There's a difference between being bothered and experiencing pain. Pain is unavoidable. It's part of being human. When you lose someone you love, you will grieve. When you face injustice, you will feel anger. When you experience failure, you will feel disappointment. These feelings are natural and healthy. Being unbothered doesn't mean being inhuman. It means not adding unnecessary suffering on top of the unavoidable pain. It means feeling what you feel without drowning in it. It means experiencing the natural response to loss or hardship without letting it destroy your entire sense of self. Most of our suffering isn't from the pain itself. It's from our thoughts about the pain. It's from asking, why is this happening to me? It's from resisting what is. It's from the story we create about what the pain means about us, our worth, our future. This is the suffering we can release. This is the part where we can remain unbothered even while feeling pain. When you lose your job, the pain of not having income is real. But the story you tell yourself about being a failure, about never being able to recover, about what this means about your worth as a person, that's added suffering. That's optional. That's what you can release. Napoleon Hill shared a powerful insight about this. He said that every challenge, every setback, every moment of pain carries within it the seed of an equal or greater benefit. But you can only find that seed if you're not completely consumed by the emotional reaction to the challenge. If you can maintain some part of yourself that remains clear, centered, and connected to wisdom, then you can find the gift within the difficulty. This isn't some magical thinking where you pretend bad things are actually good. It's about maintaining enough presence to see what the challenge is teaching you, what it's revealing about you, what opportunities it's creating that weren't there before. This doesn't mean pretending everything is fine when it's not. It doesn't mean spiritual bypassing or toxic positivity. It means meeting your challenges with presence instead of panic. It means feeling your emotions without being destroyed by them. It means trusting that you have the inner resources to handle whatever comes, not because nothing can hurt you, but because something in you is stronger than any hurt. When Napoleon Hill faced bankruptcy, he didn't pretend it didn't hurt. He didn't act like losing everything was no big deal, but he also didn't let that loss define him. He didn't let it convince him that he was worthless or that his life was over. He felt the pain, learned the lessons, and kept moving forward. The people Napoleon Hill studied who handled real challenges best all had this quality. They could face devastating circumstances without being devastated internally. They could experience terrible losses without losing themselves. They could go through hell without becoming bitter, cynical, or defeated. How? Because they understood that circumstances are temporary, but who you are is permanent. They understood that what happens to you is less important than who you become through what happens to you. They understood that the worst thing that can happen to you externally is nothing compared to what happens when you lose your inner peace, your integrity, your connection to something deeper. Think about the people throughout history who faced the worst circumstances imaginable. People who lost everything, who suffered unspeakable hardships, who went through trials that would break most people. Some of them were destroyed by their circumstances. They became bitter, broken, defeated. But others, they found something in those circumstances that made them stronger, wiser, more compassionate. They found the seed of benefit that Napoleon Hill talked about. They transformed their pain into wisdom, their suffering into strength, their challenges into character. What was the difference? It wasn't their circumstances. It was how they chose to meet their circumstances. It was their ability to remain unbothered internally, even while experiencing real pain externally. This is what Napoleon Hill discovered through his own trials and through studying others. Real challenges don't break you. They reveal you. They show you what you're made of. They strip away everything superficial and temporary and show you what's real and permanent. And if you can maintain your center during those times, if you can stay connected to something deeper when everything on the surface is falling apart, then you emerge from those challenges transformed. Not because the challenges were good, but because you remained good through them. Not because the pain didn't hurt, but because you didn't let the her destroy who you are. That's the real test. That's where these principles prove their worth. Not in the easy times, but in the impossible times. Not when life is calm, but when life is chaos.
The ultimate freedom.
So we've covered a lot of ground. We've talked about controlled attention, emotional detachment, releasing control, daily practice, spiritual connection, relationships, and facing real challenges. But all of these principles point to one ultimate truth, one ultimate freedom that Napoleon Hill discovered and taught throughout his entire life. The freedom to choose who you are, regardless of what's happening around you. This is the freedom that changes everything. This is the freedom that makes you truly unbothered. Because once you realize you have this freedom, nothing can touch you. Not in the sense that nothing can hurt you, but in the sense that nothing can force you to become someone you're not. This is the freedom that nobody can take from you. They can take your money, your status, your health, your comfort. But they cannot take your ability to choose your response. They cannot take your ability to maintain your inner peace. They cannot take your connection to something deeper. This freedom is yours, always, in every moment, regardless of circumstances. It doesn't matter what's happening in the economy. It doesn't matter what people are saying about you. It doesn't matter what obstacles appear in your path. You still have this freedom. You can still choose your response. You can still decide who you're going to be in this moment. Most people never realize they have this freedom. They live their entire lives believing that their internal state must match their external circumstances. Good circumstances equal good feelings. Bad circumstances equal bad feelings. They're trapped in this equation, forever at the mercy of a world they can't control. But the truth is, this equation is a lie. Your internal state is independent of your external circumstances. You can be at peace in chaos. You can be joyful in difficulty. You can be strong in uncertainty. Once you realize this, once you truly embody this, you're free. You're no longer a prisoner of your circumstances. You're no longer controlled by what happens to you. You're free to be who you choose to be. Napoleon Hill spent his entire life pointing people to this freedom. Not through empty promises or wishful thinking, but through practical principles that anyone can apply. And in 2026, as we face more challenges, more distractions, more reasons to lose our peace than ever before, these principles are more valuable than ever. Because the world is only going to get more chaotic. The external circumstances are only going to get more unpredictable. But your ability to remain centered, to act as if nothing bothers you, to maintain your inner freedom, that's completely within your control. The chaos around you doesn't have to create chaos within you. The uncertainty out there doesn't have to create uncertainty in here. You have a choice. And this is what Napoleon Hill wanted everyone to understand. Success isn't about having perfect circumstances. It's about having perfect control over yourself regardless of circumstances. Happiness isn't about everything going your way. It's about maintaining your inner peace when nothing is going your way. Power isn't about controlling the world. It's about controlling your response to the world. This is the ultimate freedom. This is what makes you truly free. Not freedom from challenges, because challenges will always come, but freedom in challenges. Freedom to choose your response, freedom to maintain your center, freedom to be who you are no matter what's happening. Think about what your life would look like if you fully embrace this freedom. You wake up every morning knowing that whatever happens today, you get to choose how you respond. Someone disrespects you, and you choose dignity over reaction. Plans fall apart, and you choose adaptability over stress. Bad news arrives, and you choose presence over panic. You're not at the mercy of circumstances anymore. You're not being tossed around by every wave that comes. You're standing on solid ground within yourself, and that ground never moves, no matter how much the world shakes. That's freedom. That's real power. That's what Napoleon Hill discovered and taught. But here's what you need to understand. This freedom isn't given to you. It's claimed by you. Nobody is going to hand you the ability to remain unbothered. Nobody is going to give you permission to maintain your peace. You have to claim it. You have to practice it. You have to defend it against a world that constantly wants to pull you into reaction, drama, and chaos. Every day, you'll have opportunities to give away this freedom. Every day something will happen that invites you to lose your center, and every day you get to choose. Will you give away your freedom for the temporary satisfaction of being right, being validated, or being reactive? Or will you keep your freedom and respond from your center? Napoleon Hill believed that this was the most important choice any person could make. More important than choosing a career, more important than choosing where to live, more important than any external choice. Because this choice determines the quality of your entire life. It determines whether you live as a free person or a prisoner. It determines whether you experience life as an adventure or a burden. It determines whether you maintain your dignity or lose yourself in reaction. And the beautiful thing about this choice is that it's always available. No matter how many times you've lost your center in the past, no matter how reactive you've been, no matter how bothered you've become, right now, in this moment, you can choose differently. You can reclaim your freedom. You can return to your center. You can decide that from this point forward, nothing will steal your peace unless you allow it. This is the ultimate lesson from Napoleon Hill. This is what he discovered after decades of studying success and spending years testing these principles in his own life. True success, true peace, true power comes from this freedom. The freedom to choose who you are regardless of what's happening around you. And once you claim this freedom, once you practice this freedom, once you live from this freedom, you become truly unbothered. Not because nothing affects you, but because you've decided that your internal state is not for sale. You've decided that your peace is not negotiable. You've decided that your freedom is more valuable than any temporary satisfaction that comes from being reactive. That's the ultimate freedom. That's what changes everything. And that's what's available to you right now if you choose it. So here's what it all comes down to. You have a choice to make. You can continue living as you've been living, reactive and bothered by everything that doesn't go your way, or you can start today, right now, to reclaim your inner peace. Not tomorrow, not when circumstances improve, not when you have more time or fewer problems. Today, because the perfect conditions will never come. Life will always give you reasons to be bothered. The question is, will you take the bait? Everything I've shared with you today isn't theory. It's not philosophy for philosophy's sake. These are practical principles that Napoleon Hill discovered by studying the most successful people of his time and testing them in his own life. And they work. Not because they change your circumstances, but because they change you. And when you change, everything changes. Imagine going through your day tomorrow completely unbothered. Someone cuts you off in traffic, and instead of rage, you simply adjust your path. Your boss criticizes your work, and instead of defensiveness, you simply listen for anything useful and release the rest. Your plans fall apart, and instead of stress, you simply adapt to what is. That notification tries to steal your attention, and you simply choose not to give it. This isn't a fantasy. This is completely available to you right now through practice and commitment. The transformation won't happen overnight. You've spent years building patterns of reactivity. Those patterns won't dissolve
in a day.
But every moment is a new opportunity to choose differently. Every trigger is a chance to practice. Every challenge is an invitation to grow. And if you stay committed to this path, if you keep returning to these principles, you will transform. You will become someone who moves through life with grace, strength, and unshakable peace. And that version of you, that's who you really are, underneath all the conditioning. You're just remembering what you forgot. Subscribe if this resonated with you.